issue. So that's who I am, and that's why we're all here. We're glad to host this with our 4 panelists today. When you're executive director, the other thing they tell you as a nonprofit, you need a great story. Today, I'm not going to tell you a story. We're going to have 4 panelists that are going to tell you a great story. They have a lot to share with you today. We want you to be well informed as you leave. So I will stop and tell you that if Zoom is working, somewhere with us is the NAMI outreach coordinator, Grace Reynolds. And James, do we have her up there somewhere?
Hi, yes, I'm here. I can start sharing my screen and get going.
There you go, Grace. She's going to update you on the partnership we're renewing with NAMI. You have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know that we are a little bit short on time, so I'm going to go through this presentation fairly quickly, but all my contact information will be on the last slide, and Tim can also share my information with you as well if you have any questions. So hello, my name is Grace. As Tim just said, I'm the outreach coordinator for NAMI Texas. Thanks for taking the time to sit and listen to my spiel today within this meeting so I can share a bit about NAMI Texas and what we do and who we serve. Just change our slide there. So for you guys that don't know, the National Alliance on Mental Texas, or NAMI Texas, is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We were founded by volunteers in 1984. It was a group of people sitting around a kitchen table that decided that there needed to be more support for their family members that were affected by mental illness. So they formed NAMI to do just that. And NAMI Texas is affiliated with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization. NAMI Texas has 27 affiliates and nearly 2,000 members throughout the state of Texas, and most of our members are made up of individuals living with mental illness, family members, friends, and professionals. And our purpose is to help improve the lives of people affected by mental illness, and we do this through education, support, and advocacy. And today I'm going to very briefly touch on those 3 pillars and how we provide support to our members within those 3 pillars. Before I get into that, I'm going to briefly share this slide with you. This just shows the NAMI Texas affiliate map. It shows our coverage of affiliates throughout the state of Texas. So first, I'm going to start with our education programs. Education is an essential part of understanding and coping with mental illness and mental health conditions. So what NAMI Texas does is we train our volunteers free of cost to lead classes, provide presentations and support groups in a variety of different community settings. And our programs are intended to change lives and reduce stigma. So NAMI programs are provided at the local level by our affiliates. So like I previously just mentioned, we have 27 affiliates throughout the state of Texas, and those affiliates are the ones that provide the supports and the presentation to their respective communities. So our support groups and presentations are offered from a variety of different perspectives, and I believe that's what makes NAMI so special and so unique. So for example, our family support group is a peer-led support group provided from the loved one's perspective. So my brother-in-law is bipolar, and so I have the unique lens of caring for someone with a mental health condition. So this would be the support group that I would either attend if I needed some additional support, or it would be the support group that I would facilitate. And then on the other hand, our NAMI Connection support group, which is a peer-led support group for any adult who has experienced the symptoms of a mental health condition. So my brother-in-law would either attend this if he needed extra support, or he would facilitate this support group. So by sharing your experiences in a safe and confidential setting, which is what NAMI provides, you can gain a sense of connection. NAMI support groups encourage empathy, productive discussion, and a sense of community, and participants really benefit from other people's experience. So like I just mentioned, I have a loved one with a mental illness, and during his first psychosis about 10 years ago, my husband and I went to our first NAMI family support group, and it was incredibly healing knowing that other people were experiencing a similar journey as ours. And I've been to counseling, I've been to NAMI support groups, And they obviously both have their advantages. They both have several pros and are incredibly important in the healing journey, but there's something really special about being in a NAMI support group in which you know all the members that have joined that, whether they're the facilitators or just the people attending it, have all walked the same walk that you're walking to some degree. It's a community of people that have been there for you, that are saying that, I understand what you're going through, what you've been through, and you don't have to do this alone. And I just think that's incredibly powerful. And then NAMI Texas also provides a variety of different classes and presentations. I'm not going to go through all of those because of the time limit today, but you can learn more about our programs on our webpage, namitexas.org, and it'll also be linked on the last slide as well. So NAMI Texas' role as an advocacy organization grew from the needs of its members to effect a positive change in the response of society, government, and business to an individual with a mental illness. NAMI Texas advocates for individuals living with mental illness and their families in a variety of ways. Often, our advocacy includes writing reports, conducting research, and providing testimony to the legislative committees. We seek to promote change by providing evidence-based information on the importance of access to comprehensive and timely mental health services and supports. So medications, counseling, support groups, education, and vocational training. And we do this for policymakers, community, stakeholders, and the general public. The NAMI Texas Public Policy Platform provides a detailed look into how we propose to improve access and availability of mental health care to all Texans. So this document reflects the emphasis that we place on addressing gaps in the care continuum that jeopardizes the health and well-being of those that are most in need. We produced a policy platform one-pager that provides a high-level view of our priorities to legislators, advocates, and stakeholders. And that one-pager, as you can see, is on this slide. You might have difficult seeing it, but you can also find it on the namitexas.org webpage as well. So based on the events of the 87th legislative session, the NAMI Texas Public Policy team has developed a list of policy priorities for the 87th interim. Interim priorities are the issues that NAMI Texas will champion in the lead up to the 88th session in 2023. But in short, our policy priorities include criminal justice, healthcare access, and early intervention. And then lastly, in this area, our members' voices, as you'll see reflected throughout all of NAMI, are critical to our advocacy. So legislators are influenced not only by statistics, but by personal stories from people impacted by mental health policies. So to help ensure that our members' voices are heard, we help train them to tell their stories through a program called NAMI Smarts. NAMI Smarts for Advocacy is a hands-on advocacy training program that helps people living with mental illness, friends, and families transform their passion and their lived experience into skillful grassroots advocacy. And this course teaches you how to share your story in a way that moves policymakers. So there's several different modules to this course, some of which include telling your story, how to contact your policymaker, meeting your policymaker, and much more. And again, these trainings take place on both the local and the state level. And again, I'll share this information. You can find this information on namitexas.org. And then next, which is my favorite part, is our spotlight on our volunteers. NAMI's vision is supported by an affiliate-driven operating model. So, oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong slide. Is affiliate-driven operating model. So in other words, we're able to support and fulfill our mission because of the leaders and the volunteers that we have throughout Texas. So again, I previously mentioned that we have 27 affiliates throughout the state of Texas, and these affiliates provide a variety of free of charge education and support groups that we previously mentioned throughout this presentation. And it just depends on your community, which support groups and presentations that you would provide. So for example, they help answer helpline calls, they connect people within their community through social media and email. They have active and current list of hospitals and treatment centers and therapists that are local within your community, and they provide free of care resources in community. They also provide hope and recovery by spreading awareness and reducing the stigma of mental illness. And they do this by providing the support that I just listed above, but they also do this by speaking freely about mental illness. So they share their personal stories, they meet with local legislative, they attend and host events. Simply by being a presence within their community helps spread awareness and reduce stigma. And then lastly, this brings me to NAMI, Grayson, Fannin, and Cook. So this affiliate is not currently active, meaning that they're not currently providing support groups to the community or hosting general meetings, and they don't have a standing leadership group. This group wants, as many of you in this audience probably know, they will want a very active affiliate. So NAMI Texas is working to rebuild this affiliate, and that starts at the leadership level. So our biggest next goal, our biggest priority right now is really filling those volunteer leadership positions. So that includes someone to be the main point of contact, which is what we call the designated affiliate leader, someone that's willing to help organize and host support group offerings, and ideally someone that can help manage outreach efforts. There's an in-depth presentation that I can give on building this leadership team and the different roles that are served. I would be happy to give this presentation for anyone that's interested. I can also travel to Grayson, Fannin, and Cook to give this presentation in person as well, if anyone is interested in that. So my contact information is going to be listed on the next slide, and so I can share that with you. But before I end this presentation, I would be remiss if I did not mention that NAMI Texas has our annual conference happening November 3rd through the 4th. And this year's conference is in Frisco, Texas. And I did the math, and I think it's only 52 miles from Austin College, which I believe is where most of you are at today. So our goal within this conference is to bring stakeholders together to create a community of hope and healing for individuals and families affected by mental illness. I may be a little bit biased, but I think that our conference is going to be the event of the year for the Texas mental health community. And we have two world-class keynote speakers, including Andy Keller, which many of you might know, and Liz McInville, who is an international leader on obsessive compulsive disorder. Her father's Mattress Mac. We have 24 workshops, exhibitors, continuing education, award ceremonies, and much more. So if you have the time and you are free that weekend, I implore you to register and attend this event. And again, as with everything else in this presentation, you can find that information on namitexas.org. My email is also on this slide, as well as my direct line. So yeah, thank you for your time. I know I just spilled out a bunch of information. I know that I don't have a lot of time today. So if you have any questions, or if you're interested in joining this affiliate and working with this affiliate, please reach out to me, and we can have that conversation and go from there.
Thank you, Grace. Appreciate it. We look forward to partnering with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for role modeling for our other panelists and staying within your time allotment too. So it's very appreciated.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate
And yeah, my email's up there, and if you have any questions, like I said, please don't hesitate.
Thanks. Our next panelist, I've been struggling with how I'll introduce him, because when I first met him, I was a Little League baseball coach, and so was he. So I had a different name given to me, but he's used it already this morning a couple of times, so I don't feel like I'm being disrespectful. Our next panelist is Judge James Corky Henderson. Judge, come on up. The judge has been getting ready for this moment for a long time, so give him a hand. He does suffer the details. Judge, good job.
I do. You'll find that out. Let me, we got a little technology here to take care of, but while we're getting that ready, let me just let Let me say hello to Michelle and to Liz, and who else is on there? That's it. It's good to see y'all. Wish y'all were here. There she is. I can see her, y'all can't. There we go. All right. Well, good morning. So I'm going to talk to you about the mental health jail diversion in Grayson County and really where we've come in the last year. At Steve Jobs' funeral, one of his eulogists said this: I think he better than anyone understood that while ideas ultimately can be so powerful, they begin as fragile, barely formed thoughts, so easily squished. And when I began preparing for this presentation, I had a very ambitious idea of sharing with you all the education we've had over the past year, all the details of all the different things we've done and tried to do over the past year. And when I looked at the outline that I'd created, it really looked more like a syllabus for a college course than an outline for a 30-minute lunch presentation. There's been a whole lot of work that we put in over the last year. We really started with very little structure that engaged everyone in the process in the way that we need. And in trying to develop and implement a structure that works, we have spent many, many hours brainstorming, planning, building, tearing down, rebuilding, educating, re-educating, and very frankly, we're not there yet. But the thought comes to mind of what Churchill said when the tide started to turn somewhat in World War II. This is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning. And so very quickly, here are some of the things that we've done. The first thing that we did when we started this project is undertake a very detailed study of the published literature and the work of national, state, and local experts. We really started with no structure, and we needed a blueprint. So this is where we went, and we went to a lot of different sources who we believed had the expertise to tell us how to set this up. Now, this is some information that we looked at in detail from the Judicial Commission on Mental Health. The Judicial Commission on Mental Health is an organization that was established several years ago by judges, and they established this organization to assist the courts in dealing with issues of mental health. What's displayed there is their bench book. Now, over the last year or so, when I sit down in my living room to watch whatever I watch on TV, I've got a table and I've got the Bible, I've got the Major League Baseball rule book, and I've got this. And this is a very essential source of information for any attorney or judge who is practicing in the field of mental health. And we have looked at this bench book in detail, and we refer to it quite a bit. We've also participated in the Community Diversion Coordinator Pilot Program. There are a number of meetings that have been held through this pilot program that have really directly affected what we do. We attended the 2021 Judicial Summit on Mental Health, and then there's another Judicial Summit on Mental Health coming up in a couple of weeks. So we've accessed those sources. We've also participated in the JCMH Collaborative Council. This is material from the National Center for State Courts, NCSC. Now, we didn't have this information available to us at the beginning, but this is very, very useful information that we gained access to a few weeks ago. This is a publication that was developed by NCSC after a very thorough study and review of a number of state courts throughout the country. They also published a document entitled Findings and Recommendations of the National Judicial Task Force to Examine State Courts' Response to Mental Illness. This just came out in July, and we're going to look at some of these findings in a little more detail in a minute. We spent a lot of time looking at the information from the Texas Health and Human Services Commission, HHSC. We first participated about a year ago in this Jail in Reach Collaborative. It lasted 4 weeks. Every Friday, we attended this Zoom learning collaborative for 3 or 4 hours. And so that was a lot of time that we spent accessing information available from HHSC. They also published this workbook following the, I guess, completion of the InReach Collaborative. I like this picture, you know. I don't know who these people are. They look very happy. They're not like the people we see in the jail. And so that's interesting. We also looked at the Texas Commission on Jail Standards. Now, TCJS, these guys, they've got a lot of rules. They got a lot of rules. And not only do they have rules, they will actually come to your jail and look at your jail and make sure everything is okay. And if it's not okay, they will give you fines and they will shut you down. And so even though we work in the courts, we felt like it was important to understand what some of the TCJS rules were. Now, what I put up there is their flow chart for screening and assessing arrested defendants with mental illness or intellectual disability. Every one of these organizations has a flow chart. They're all different. We looked at all of them and we compared them and made to try to make sure that what we implement is done right. This is information that the TBHLT put together. This is their behavioral needs assessment. It was published in December 2020, based on really research, I think, that was done before 2020. But we looked at this in great detail because this specifically relates to our community here. And it was a document that was prepared through funding through the TBHLT. We also attended their 6th annual Community Behavioral Health Conference. Liz, I don't know if you can recognize yourself, but you're up on that stage. There's expertise that we looked at from other agencies. The Texas Center for the Judiciary is an organization that provides education to judges. They have a lot of information that gives us information on, as judges, on how to deal with mental health issues. The Texas Indigent Defense Commission has funding and other resources that we looked at in great detail. The State Bar of Texas has education that deals with mental health defendants, and we've looked at that very thoroughly over the last year. There have been papers from other experts that we looked at. This is one of the first ones that I reviewed in really strong detail. This is from Dr. Fabello, The Challenge of Identifying, Diverting, and Treating Justice-Involved People with Mental Illness, and the Review of Texas Policies and Recommendations for Improvements. There was a sequential intercept model mapping for Potter and Randall counties that we looked at in great detail when we started this a year ago. There are papers from prepared by Professor Shannon from Texas Tech Law School that has a lot of very detailed information. This paper was actually published by NAMI Texas through a grant from the Texas Bar Foundation. So this is really another example of what NAMI does. But we've looked at this, and this is really something that's looked at statewide. And then this is Professor Shannon's, an earlier article that he published that relates specifically to the procedures for administering psychoactive medication for defendants or inmates in the jail. And so that is available, and we've looked at that very specifically as well. Now, based on all of that research that we did, we developed some action points. We developed recommendations, and we personally met with a large number of stakeholders, many of whom are in this room, to discuss those recommendations about a year ago. We developed procedures and forms for what are called Article 1622 interviews. We developed procedures to identify current inmates in the jail with mental health needs more quickly. We did that by leveraging technology in Odyssey. That was not an easy thing to come up with, but we worked very hard to try to find out how we could access that information in Odyssey more easily, and also to securely save and digitize documents, such as what is called the Sandra Bland form. It's a medical intake screening, a mental health intake screening, which state law requires to be completed on every inmate. And so we've digitized those, and we've made those available to people who need to see them, as opposed to keeping those in a paper file and having to run around and try to find them every time we needed to look at one. We participated in the HHSC Jail Inreach Collaborative that I referred to a moment ago. And based upon what they taught us, we developed some recommendations. We have highlighted the need for state hospital data to be monitored by the people within the court system who need to have access to that data. We have highlighted the need to develop and implement a process to judicially authorize the administration of psychoactive medication to inmates in the jail who have been found to be incompetent and are waiting for a bed to open at the state hospital. We've highlighted the need for both jail-based competency restoration and outpatient competency restoration. We've highlighted the need to develop what in the literature is called a warm handoff. And that is when a judge authorizes a person with mental illness to be released from jail to be supervised by the probation office and served by the LMHA, local LMHA, which is TCC. We've highlighted the need to implement a weekly meeting following the model recommended by HHSC and which has been implemented successfully in many other counties. We've highlighted the need to utilize an HHSC form called Form Z to use certain data which HHSC requires to be maintained by LMHAs so that we can help monitor progress with inmates with mental illness. We've highlighted the need to have greater LMHA presence in the jail itself. And we've highlighted the need to better engage the defense bar, the attorneys, in the legal representation of defendants with mental illness. Now, one comment I want to make about this slide before we move on. These are needs that we have highlighted. These are needs that were recommended by HHSC and that we have seen employed in other counties successfully. But we have made no progress on actually implementing this. And so as we go forward, this is something that I would like to see us do to try to implement some of these needs that we have. In addition, Ms. Groves, who you're going to hear from in a moment, shadowed mental health diversion programs in other counties. She established relationships with JCMH and numerous mental health diversion coordinators and others who work with mental health defendants in other counties throughout Texas. She facilitated a Lubbock trip for court officers, judges, and probation. And I don't know if anybody else is going to talk about this trip, but through the HHSC InReach, Lubbock County was identified as one of the model counties for handling people with mental illness. And so we scheduled a trip and we went out to Lubbock and we observed and met with the judge who kind of handled those mental health cases, saw how that worked, saw how in his court, their LMHA, their jail medical, the prosecutor's office, the defense bar would appear and brief the judge on where they were and the progression of whatever it was that was happening on that case. We also toured their jail and met with Captain Goldhammer. Is that right? Great name. And he was a very, very helpful person in helping us understand how they dealt with their mentally ill inmates in the Lubbock County Jail. So that was a very important thing that happened in the last year. And so Ms. Gross facilitated that Lubbock trip for us. We participated in the TBHLT workshop. We facilitated the SIM workshop and assisted in the preparation of their report, which I believe is either available or very close to being available. I know many of y'all attended that SIM workshop and they produced a report that if you haven't seen it, you probably would, it's probably going to be available pretty quick. Facilitated a second trip, Lubbock trip for the sheriff's office, who I believe toured the jail and got to meet Captain Goldhammer. We held meetings with both local hospital administrators, both at the TMC BHC and also Wilson and Jones, to explore the possibility of accessing any available bed space for individuals in the jail needing inpatient treatment. We held a meeting with State Representative Reggie Smith to discuss how our local mental health needs within the jail might be addressed at the state level. We've held numerous meetings with the county health department, the sheriff's office, and jail medical staff to try and find ways to improve how inmates with mental illness who we are not able to release from jail can be better cared for while they're in custody, with the recommendation to try and find a way to provide an additional medical position for a person specifically trained in mental health. And so that's something that we're still working on as well. We've worked with attorneys, both on the side of the prosecution and on the side of the defense, and with all of our judges on a daily basis to educate one another in specific cases as to how to proceed. Believe it or not, the flow of cases does not stop while we get all this figured out and get all of our ducks in a row. We deal with these every day. And I will tell you that beginning in 2020, the number of persons with mental illness who have come into the criminal justice system has really exploded. It's really exploded. And so in my mind, we started this project at just about the right time. I mean, I wish we could have all seen the global pandemic ahead of time, but we didn't. We also have participated in meetings with NCSC to discuss very specifically our issues and needs here in Grayson County. And so, as you can see, it's really been a lot of work. And perhaps, as Churchill said, we've reached the end of the beginning, and I believe we have. But this has not really been quite as easy as we thought it would be. Back in June of last year, the Grayson County Commissioners Court approved our request to apply to JCMH for this grant to fund a mental health diversion coordinator. And then in August of last year, the Commissioners Court formally accepted the grant after it was awarded. So about a year ago. And I went back and looked at the videos of those meetings and those Commissioners Court meetings. And they're very, very interesting to go back and look at now, you know, a year down the road. They're available on the Grayson County website if you want to look at them. There are a couple of things you'll see in those clips if you do look at them that I think deserve to be re-emphasized this morning. First of all, the mental health diversion coordinator position is not a position that's going to solve the problem with the mentally ill here in Grayson County. It was never expected to be. The difficulty, which was recognized last year, which has become very evident in the years since, is the elusiveness of a solution to house and treat individuals who are brought to the jail and enter the criminal justice system, because there is simply no place to house them or treat them short of going to jail. Second, as the sheriff mentioned in the Commissioners Court meeting when the submission of the grant application was approved, this problem has been developing for at least 30 years, and it won't be solved in a year or even 2 or maybe even 3 or 4. But I think we can very confidently share that we are making progress. Not easy progress necessarily, sometimes very difficult progress, but we are moving forward. I attended a judicial conference last week in Grapevine, and there was a presentation where a judge was describing the implementation of a dual status pilot project for juvenile offenders. Now, that project has nothing to do with mental health. But he said in the implementation of his program that there was a lot of knocking of heads over 2 years. And when I heard him say that, I wrote it down because I can relate to that. It is a struggle to implement these pilot programs like this, whether it's mental health or any other type of pilot program. So we just need to stay the course and just keep banging away. And if we need to continue knocking heads, we'll continue to do that. And so in the brief time I have left with you this morning, Judge Phillips and Elizabeth and I hope to share with you some of these things. I used to have a pastor who sometimes had to share things with the congregation that I think he knew the congregation might not want to hear, but the flock needed to hear it, right? And it was on the pastor's heart to share it because, you know, how do we move forward if we don't talk about the things we need to fix? The suggestions in the suggestion box that we can most use to improve are the negative ones, not the ones that tell us what a great job they're doing. And so when the pastor needed to share things with the flock that he thought maybe they didn't want to hear, he'd say this: come close, come close. This is something to make us better. And so that's the spirit I really want us to have as we share some of these things. So in addition to the lack of resources and the fact that this issue has been developing for 30 years, here's some other issues. Jail overcrowding. Here in Grayson County, we have a jail overcrowding problem, which is completely independent of the mental health problem, but it definitely impacts the mental health population. And that jail overcrowding problem is in the process of being addressed, and that will help eventually. There is a state hospital backlog. There is a backlog in getting inmates to the state hospital who've been found to be incompetent or who need inpatient treatment. A substantial backlog, years. There are currently new state hospitals in the process of being built, and hopefully the state legislature will address mental health issues this next legislative session. That will help eventually. We also have staffing problems. Staffing problems exist throughout the system. There are simply a lot of positions which are not filled. State hospital staffing. We've been told that there are beds that no one is in at the state hospital, but they are not staffed because they cannot have staffing. And so those sorts of staffing problems exist at the state hospital level, and it impacts what we do here. So we have staffing problems, but it's not just the state hospital. We have local staffing problems. We have unfilled positions at the jail. We have staffing issues with the district attorney's office. We have staffing issues within the court administration, particularly and specifically the county courts at law. Our system of court-appointed attorneys has people dropping off of it. Just staffing problems all up and down the line. And I would say addressing that will help eventually. We have communication challenges. We have communication challenges both on the technical side in things such as how to share data, both within our county and between our county and other agencies. Do we use email? Do we use SharePoint? Do we use our Odyssey system that we have in the county? And so we have a lot of technical problems to solve related to communication. We also have just the difficulties of communicating about things like what our goals are, what data is important, how to look at and where to find and assemble the actual data and not just assume what the data says. Who is making the decisions? Understanding what we in the courts need to have happen legally versus how the social services system operates. And overall, just dealing with the stress of working with a very, very challenging population of people with mental health needs. And all of these things have been very challenging. And so these are some of the issues we've seen in Grayson County, but it's also important to recognize that these issues are not unique to Grayson County. Very detailed nationwide studies by National Center for State Courts resulted in these findings. And I want to go over these with you because understand that these findings were not based on any examination of our county. They were developed based on an examination of state courts throughout the United States. But when I read these, this is exactly what we deal with in Grayson County. An estimated 70% of individuals involved in the criminal justice system have a behavioral health disorder, making state courts a significant referral source to community behavioral treatment and often making jails the largest behavioral health facilities in the jurisdiction. That's certainly true in Grayson County. The coordination between the behavioral health and justice systems in states and communities is often lacking and ineffective in providing care that reduces recidivism and improves public safety and treatment outcomes. The funding and availability of effective behavioral health treatment accessible to individuals with behavioral health disorders is inadequate in many communities, including insufficient programs, services, and alternatives other than the criminal justice system. All too often, the criminal justice system is a path of first instead of last resort to access care. Large numbers of defendants, including many who are charged with misdemeanors or nonviolent felonies, spend excessive time in jail awaiting mental health evaluations and competency restoration, often staying longer in custody than they would have if they had been convicted of the crime, creating unnecessary costs that could be reinvested in community treatment. And we have definitely seen that over the last year. We have had people on Class B misdemeanor offenses who sat in our jail for 180 days, who we had to let go with no treatment because the state hospital did not have a bed available to take them. Case flow management practices are often not designed to address the behavioral health needs of individuals and therefore increase recidivism and system costs. And this is something that we're working on quite a bit. Information sharing within and across systems utilized by courts and behavioral health agencies is inadequate, undermining opportunities to identify issues, target resources, and improve system responses. There is a lack of education and training for state court judges and court professionals necessary to equip them with the knowledge, data, research, and resources they need to improve the state court's response to court-involved individuals with mental illness. Individuals with mental illness and substance use disorders are more likely to have histories of trauma than those without the disorders. Judges are not sufficiently trained and prepared to effectively engage and respond to individuals with trauma. And in fact, the court process alone can be traumatizing. Now, this is a very interesting finding because so many of these people also have substance abuse problems for all kinds of reasons. And so the first thing I think of is an officer who encounters a situation out in the field and has really no immediate idea whether this is a mental health issue, whether it's a substance abuse issue. And so they do what they need to do. They remove the people and most often take them to jail. And so you have that aspect of it. You also have the aspect, I think, of this idea that the court process alone can be traumatizing. And I think we can take that a step further and say, not only can the court process be traumatizing, but a mentally ill person who's taken to jail, who is hearing voices, who is having delusions, is traumatized by being in the jail. And I think we have seen that where we have individuals who, particularly in an overcrowded jail, act out and are traumatized in some situations because of their mental illness and actually being taken to jail instead of being taken to some sort of place for treatment. Mental health and substance use disorders that co-occur worsen if both are not treated timely and in the appropriate sequence. By addressing responsivity needs first, co-occurrence also negatively impacts justice outcomes. People who are leaving institutional treatment settings and incarceration face a significantly higher risk of relapse, overdose, and exacerbation of their mental health conditions. And this was one of the interesting things that I think we learned when we went to Lubbock, the Lubbock jail. They have a process to reintegrate or try to reintegrate inmates who have been locked up for a while to release. Now, one thing that we've learned about mentally ill people, particularly women, is that they are often victimized when they're not in jail. They're victimized by their family or victimized by other people who are taking advantage of them. And we have seen people over the last year who would rather be in jail than not be in jail. They are benefited by the structure and the protection that jail provides. Now think about that. You know, our whole criminal justice system is based upon people not wanting to go to jail. And people do want to go to jail because their mental health issues are bad, that the people in their lives take advantage of them. And so the idea of developing programs to try to reintegrate people after they're released, I think is a very interesting thing to think about. And then finally here, 63% of judges have at least one symptom of secondary or vicarious trauma, and 50% of court staff experience high or very high levels of compassion fatigue. Daily interactions with individuals, children, and families who are reliving trauma takes an emotional toll on justice system practitioners and places them at a high risk for experiencing secondary trauma. And we have seen this in the last year. Secondary trauma experienced by people in our county who work with these people. And we have seen that. So I would next want to talk to you about case studies. But before I do that, I have another thought. In a moment, you're going to hear from Elizabeth Groves. I wanted to share with you how I've come to see this mental health diversion coordinator role. Now, Elizabeth occupies a very unique position at the crossroads, some would say crosshairs of two different worlds. First, there's the world of mental health social services, where Elizabeth has worked for around 20 years. Now, the mental health social services world has its own culture. They do things in a certain way. They speak their own language, mostly in acronyms. I think I spent the first 6 months asking Elizabeth, now tell me again, what do those letters mean? And so there's the social services world, and then there's the legal world. And this is a world where we have our own culture and our own language, and we do the things we need to do in a certain way. And also there is the law enforcement component of the legal world, those important people who are often the first ones who have to address a situation where it is not clear what is causing the person to act as they are acting. Both worlds are very complicated in and of themselves. Lawyers and judges and peace officers, even among themselves, don't always have the same understanding about how all the procedures are designed to play out in real life. And I imagine that's also true in social services. It's complicated. In our two worlds, the mental health services world and the legal world, we don't always communicate in the same language because our roles are so different. So here's our mental health diversion coordinator here in the middle. And I think that if we are to bridge this gap, then we absolutely have to see this position as a crossroad, an intersection. So she educates us on the legal side as to the ways of the mental health services tribe, and hopefully can educate the mental health services tribe on the ways of the legal tribe. And that's not an easy thing to do. So here's my slide on case studies. Now, I wanted to end with case studies. But once I tried to put this together, I saw how very, very complicated each of these cases are. They are each different. They are different and they are all complicated in their own way. And I didn't feel like there was really any way for me to communicate that to you. We have dealt with dozens and dozens of individuals with some form of mental illness over the last year. I wanted to tell you about the young man who was brought to the jail with PTSD. He would not talk, he would not eat, and we were able to identify and divert that young man to a hospital for treatment much more quickly than we ever would have been able to last year. The woman who was brought to the jail after being found in the middle of the road, who we discovered had a congenitive mental condition as a result of being born with AIDS, and we were able to divert her. I wanted to tell you about the lady who had developed mental illness after years of abuse, who was arrested out by Lake Texoma, who would not tell anyone her name because she was so afraid of people, especially men, and who was a Jane Doe until our mental health diversion coordinator built up some trust with her and she told us who she was, and she was let out of jail almost immediately after the state refused to charge her. Many, many stories like that. Very few of those have had what I would call desirable outcomes. There really are no success stories so far. We've had individuals released from jail who were arrested again within days, sometimes hours. We have had very little success being able to actually supervise people who've been released on supervised bond conditions. We have spent many hours working on diversion to the TCC crisis respite unit for one individual, only to have the person damage CRU property and run away within hours. We have diverted individuals to inpatient treatment who are arrested on the hospital grounds immediately following their discharge. We have spent days and hours working to find inpatient treatment for an inmate, and then when he got to the facility out of county, he would not participate in treatment and he was immediately discharged. And he was brought back to Denison and law enforcement had to be called almost immediately. Just one difficulty after another. And so, we have a lot of work to do, and we need to keep looking at those cases and continue to identify specific problems. I don't believe specific problems can be solved by general ideas. You have to understand exactly where things are not working, and we very much need to look at all the details. And while digging into the minutia may not be very exciting, in my experience, paying attention to the details is what gets things done. It's tedious, but it's necessary. So I've kind of gone over time just a little bit, but I wanted to tell you one thing, and that is that one of the primary goals I have for the next year is to increase the involvement of defense attorneys in the process. There's grant money out there through Texas Indigent Defense Commission. We've already begun some conversations and planning on how to access that. So with a little luck, we can hopefully see some progress there. This is a difficult position. It's a difficult situation that we're in. We have a lot of work to do, but you know, we just need to stay the course. I'm old enough to remember that Tom Landry didn't win any games his first year. So we just have to keep building on what we're doing. This is not going to be an overnight solution. But I did not want to leave you with the idea that we are close to getting this fixed. We're working on it and we'll continue to work on it, but it is a challenge as all of those, and I see a lot of heads nodding because you know this is hard. And so, hang with us and we're going to keep working on this. Thank you. I guess Elizabeth's next.
Thank you, Judge. I'm going to go out on a limb and say everyone in this room has some perspective of this big picture in their own little world. But pulling that together for everybody comprehensively, both the work and the reality is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. I've had the pleasure of working with Elizabeth and watching her work quite well in the middle of all of that stuff going on downtown that Judge Henderson mentioned. So we want her to come up and explain what it is she does and how she's been doing it. So Mental Health Diversion Coordinator, Elizabeth Groves, come on over here. And you're good. Good. To the next slide.
I don't do very well with public speaking, but I'll try. I have 3 little girls and I ran through this last night with them and I asked them to time it and they said 20. They can't count and they can't tell time. So hopefully that's pretty accurate. They can, they're old enough to be able to tell time. Judge Phillips and Judge Henderson are my 2 direct supervisors and they kind of gave me an outline of what they wanted me to talk about. So I have a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Missouri. I was a tiger at the zoo. I did obtain a minor in emphasis in human services. My first professional experience began as an in-home respite care provider, and I worked with a set of adult twins with autism. They were very challenging to work with behaviorally. They were also larger than I was, and they were quite violent, but I got a lot of experience out of that job. When I moved from Columbia to Kansas City, I continued working as an in-home respite care provider for children. And I worked for an agency on the Kansas side called Helpers Incorporated. And again, all of the kiddos that I worked with had some sort of intellectual and developmental disability, autism, Down syndrome, just a variety of different things. From there, I graduated college and I took a when I first graduated college, I worked in an independent supported living home. Texas refers to those as group homes, and that's direct care. And again, it's pretty grueling work. It's cooking all the meals, it's doing all the house cleaning, it's maintaining budgets, it's medication administration. It's just a variety of tasks within the home that these individuals live in when they can no longer reside in their natural homes. From there, I did take a supervisory position as what is known as a qualified developmental disabilities professional at a rehabilitation center. I worked at Developmental Center of the Ozarks, and that was a tech and learning facility that did provide job readiness skills, pre-employment supports, and on-the-job training for individuals with IDD. So much of my early experience was completely and directly related to intellectual and developmental disabilities, which is quite different than mental illness. All of this was in Springfield, Missouri. I moved back to Kansas City and took a job as a service coordinator through Cass County Board of Directors. That was kind of a mixed caseload of adults and children, and some had waivers and some did not. To explain a waiver would probably take 2 days, so I'm not going to go into that. Just means that they had some sort of funding. From there, I took a job. I decided to switch from IDD because it was quite challenging and moved over to the mental health world. and became a case manager or QMHP, and had a caseload of adults with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, a variety again of different diagnoses. That was challenging, so very different from IDD. I didn't quite know what to think of it, didn't know if I would last in it, but decided to stick with it. And this was all again while I was still living in Missouri. At one point, about 5 years ago, I moved to Texas and took a job as the IDD, Crisis Intervention and Prevention Specialist, which was a program development position. It didn't exist at TCC prior. That was writing brochures, that was developing program requirements, developing the 90-day model. I worked with MetroCare in Dallas to do that. So I flipped back to the IDD world. And at that point decided that I had had enough. I was done with IDD, I was done with mental health, and on a whim applied to become a probation officer. I interviewed and I could not believe it, but they did offer me the position. And so I did accept. And for about 1.5 years, I worked with Grayson County CSCD. I didn't feel like I had as much of a caseworker role. I felt like I couldn't help as I could before in case management and service coordination. So I did go back to mental health and took a job as the team lead at Life Path Systems for jail diversion, Takumi, and outpatient competency restoration. I did that for 2 years, and I still could not tell you what Takumi stands for unless I look it up. But it is completely forensics based. We use Senate Bill 292. I had a team of caseworkers. I had a team of licensed clinical LPHAs, licensed practitioners of healing arts. For outpatient competency, you have to have a licensed clinician. Anyway, did that for about 2 years and then was told about this mental health diversion coordinator position in Grayson County. And I thought, hey, let's do this. There are only 3 in the state. You have a chance to make a huge difference, develop something that's never been developed before. Why don't you try? And I did, and here I am. In between all of this, I did join the United States Army, and I did become, my MOS was Intel Analyst. I don't talk about it a lot because I don't have to. And I will tell you standing here now, I cannot tell you which was more intimidating. Interviewing with a panel of 3 criminal court judges, a panel of 5 probation chiefs, deputy chiefs, and supervisors, or 1 FBI agent. But I will say I should not sit in a plastic chair. My why. I began working in mental health in high school. I needed tutoring hours for the scholarship I was applying for. And I was told that the quickest and easiest way would be the special education classroom, and that 100% of my time in that classroom would count towards tutoring. I went ahead and did it, and I never left. That was my sophomore year. I continued tutoring the special education for the remainder of my high school years. As well, my family consists of a broad amount of people. All of my uncles but 1 are attorneys. Lots of them are politicians. My mom's older brother just recently retired as the sheriff of St. Louis County. My stepdad was a colonel in the United States Air Force. And to tell you, he fought in World War II. So he was actually in the Army Air Corps before there was an Air Force. My great-grandfather was a campaign manager for Harry S. Truman when he ran for state senate. And all the females in my family have been on the human services side. My grandmother was a psychiatric nurse. We have behavioral health specialist. One of my aunts was a grant writer. And so because of all of that, you get somebody like me. The most personal thing that I can tell you is that at the age of 25, I received a call from my mother. She said, I need you. And I met with her at the Marion Center in Springfield, Missouri. And that was the first time I had to admit her for suicidal ideation. The community diversion coordinator has several administrative positions. The grant administrator is Judge Bill Majors. He is our county judge. The program director is Judge Corky Henderson. He refers to himself as Corky Henderson. I prefer to call him Judge James Henderson. He went to Baylor and he graduated with honors. He also attended one of the top law school in the state of Texas. He practiced law for 15 years, working for governing entities, and his resume is probably 3 miles long. So to have him as a direct supervisor, he does pay attention to the details, and it's not the easiest. And I try to do everything that they tell me to do. My direct supervisor is Judge Larry Phillips. He is the 59th District Court Judge. The other supervising judges include Carol Seidman, Jim Fallon, and Brian Gary. Suzette Smith is the financial officer, and the program manager is Liz Wiggins through the Judicial Commission on Mental Health. The grant, there were certain requirements in itself. JCMH partnered with HHSC to develop this position that was focused on enhancing coordination between the courts and behavioral health providers. The emphasis and the goal was to divert individuals with mental illness who are charged with nonviolent misdemeanor offenses away from the criminal justice system. Judge Henderson already discussed the Jail Inreach Collaborative, but we did participate in that. And of course, we have to adhere to the financial allocations and fund distribution of the Community Diversion Grant, which is what it's referred to by JCMH. We just call it the Mental Health Diversion Coordinator. So the very first thing that the judges asked me to do was meet with our community partners. So I met with the local mental health authority. I met with adult probation, the district attorney, the justices of the peace, jail administration, mental health probation officers, jail medical team, all the criminal court judges. So what do you want from this? What are your expectations? What are your plans? We wanted to make this as collaborative as possible to develop program goals. And so generally speaking, most everybody said we want a tracking system for the 1622. We want a court liaison to communicate information with the state hospitals. We wanted increased communication of mental health concerns directly to the courts, meaning their court coordinators, their court clerks. They wanted better communication between the jail, community supervision, corrections department, the local mental health authority, and the courts. They wanted some sort of point person for mental health bonds. So if individuals do receive a mental health bond and there are violations, who do those bond violation notices go to? They wanted better information on individuals releasing on these bonds. Can you please tell me what offense it is, what diagnosis they have, any kind of medications that they have to take? Do they have a caseworker? Are they linked yet with any kind of supports in the community? They wanted increased stability of individuals before they released, because before we would have people with extreme psychosis releasing on jail with these bonds who maybe the day before, or even just that day, had been cuffed and shackled in the jail, but were releasing with these bonds. They wanted additional jail-based interventions to assist in the reduction in symptomology besides medication. Medication can only do so much. They wanted additional interventions in trying to de-escalate individuals with extreme psychosis. They wanted appropriate bond amounts set during that initial magistration. So taking into account the offense, the criminal history, and the ability to pay. And then they wanted the development of an IDT team, and that was to review challenging cases. So people who maybe are not incompetent, but maybe they have some sort of a behavioral health diagnosis that medication cannot treat. Maybe they want to be in jail. They have no natural supports. They have no funding. They have no transportation. They have no residency. So what can we do with these individuals? And there was a lot of research that went into this, and I cannot tell you how grueling that was. I'm not an office person, and the first 6 months or so I sat in a chair and behind a desk. Every job I've ever had before this was boots on the ground. So I went to Collin County and I observed Tony Fox and Joseph Hill. Tony Fox does the court side and Joseph Hill does the jail side, and I spent a day with them. What do you guys do? They work at the Elise Ferguson and managed counsel office. I typed up an extremely long email and I sent that to my supervisors, and Judge Phillips couldn't believe how long did that take you to type that email. We did go to Lubbock. We did observe their mental health docket and their jail-based competency restoration. What we found out that in order, all you need for a JBCR to work is a table and chairs. That's all you need. They happen to have a mental health wing for a lot of other reasons, but to administer and to implement a facilitate jail-based competency, you have to have a table and chairs, and that's it. We found out that other hospitals around the state were developing curriculums for restoration, such as Palestine. Judge Phillips gets on to me for saying Palestine, but I'm not from Texas, and that doesn't look like Palestine to me. And Montgomery counties, they have curriculum programs that are 100 versus 60 days, depending on the offense, felony or misdemeanor. And then again, the Jail Inreach Collaborative request forms, so we could request forensic consultation, clinical consultation, and re-examination. I will tell you, we had an individual on the state hospital wait list for just over a year. He did take medication voluntarily. He presented as competent. I submitted a request to the Jail Inreach Collaborative for re-examination, which is typically a $750 to $1,500 cost. They came and re-examined him for free. He was found competent, his case moved along, and he did enter a plea within a few weeks of that finding, after we received the report back. I'm trying to watch the clock too. And then some progressions. I developed the mental health assessment, which is just a more thorough screening form. It just adds a little bit more information. It does not work in place of the 1622, but alongside the 1622. It allows for me to do longer interviews. I get a lot more of the mental health history, and I can note observations of the inmate, such as smell, appearance, eye contact, things that maybe we couldn't pick up over like a Zoom. We also developed the criminal to flip. And why is this important? As Judge Henderson said, if somebody's in on a misdemeanor offense, maybe found to be incompetent, they're not going to the state hospital on the criminal track. So we were able to develop a method of flipping them to the civil track. And that involves an MCOT crisis screening. It involves a recommendation for the least restrictive environment to be an inpatient hospital setting. And then from there, hopefully the hospitals will make the recommendation for state hospital, and that's much, much quicker than waiting years on the criminal route. And then the Sandra Bland critical reviews, like Judge Henderson mentioned, the Sandra Bland screening form is required to be completed within 12 hours of booking. It's just a screening device for mental illness. Jail standards requires that based on certain questions, they need to have additional further screening by the LMHA within 72 hours of booking. But there's a lot that can be missed in that. So I take a look at that Sandra Bland form, and I pick up some of them maybe where there are gaps. And again, this is not in place of anything that the jail was already doing. It's just kind of filling in some gaps and plugging in some holes. This has been a very challenging year, but I will say that I have thoroughly enjoyed being able to learn things that I didn't know before, and working alongside these community partners. I look forward to the next year.
Elizabeth, you did great, and thank you for being here. You're doing a great job for us. Elizabeth's position is grant funded. So somewhere down the line, we'll be asking ourselves with resources, what do we do and how do we keep it going forward? So appreciate it. And don't worry, I'm not from Texas. Judge Phillips corrects me too. So that's something we share in common, I guess. Judge Phillips told me how long he's going to take today. It's written over there on my pad. Anybody want to get in on the bet that he stays within the time? He told, yeah, exactly. Everybody want? It's a single digit number. You want to get in on it?
Thank you.
Our judge is also the chair of TBHLT. We love him.
Thanks.
All
Tim.
yours.
So, guys, we just heard a lot of information, and so I'm going to kind of wrap it up and kind of bring it back to where we are now. Thank everybody in this room. Your passion for this community we're talking about, our entire community, but also these individuals. It's awesome. I'm glad you're here. You wouldn't be here if it wasn't important, unless somebody made you come, but I don't think there's only a few people in here that could probably make some of us be here. You guys are the leaders, and we're going to make a difference. We already have made a difference. When you think about the young man that spent a year in our jail, and then once we finally were able to get him to take medication, he became competent and or was found to be competent, and we were able to resolve his case. And he's no longer being in our jail, which is overcrowded, which you've heard about, and the taxpayers are paying for him. He may be somewhere else the taxpayers are paying for him, but it's not Grayson County taxpayers specifically. Gosh, y'all have heard a lot about what we've done. A lot of that's legal stuff. You've heard about the legal things, and that's one of the things that as part of this grant that we received, we have to communicate to the community, and we have to bring together leaders and let them know what we're doing, so that y'all can say, well, that's really good, or have you thought about this, or we know a resource that maybe will help you. Those are the things that why we do this. I'm grateful for the Judicial Commission on Mental Health. Several of them are watching us. They've done an amazing job with this program. Judge Noel, I don't see Rita here. She brought this concept to us, and we applied. And as you heard, there were 3 of us selected, and we had to put together a grant request. And Judge Henderson was involved with that. Sarah Bigham was involved with that. And Dr. Cantu provided a great resources to that and helped us put the language together. And what I had been challenged to do is just tell the story of what Grayson County's been doing before. You know, what y'all are doing from the TBLHT, which used to be NUCO, and the work that we're doing together in mental health. Tell that story, you know, that y'all got the needs assessment, which the foundation helped us so much to be able to get that and pay for that and build on those things. Now, so what have we gotten out of this grant program? Just kind of talk about dollars. Well, one is the first 2 years of the grant program, the salary's paid 100%. The third year's 80%, and the fourth year 60%. And I want to thank the Commissioners Court for approving this position, and then everybody that's helped assist make this happen for this position. Now, as a result of this position, we have some pretty cool things that have happened. One is the jail in-reach you've heard about, where Dr. Cantu, I know, and some of her folks, and the jail captain, Bigham, and other people within the sheriff's department, court, probation officers, we all got to be in this in-reach, and it was a pretty intense training, and it's helped us come up with some common languages and understanding. It also helped us hear some challenges to us and where we can recognize where we have deficits. And what we found is that other counties, even counties larger than us, are struggling with some of the very same things, which is, I think you heard much of that from Judge Henderson. But that was a great opportunity for us. In fact, I'm going to participate in it again in a small level as well. And it also has helped us have a great relationship with the Health and Human Services Commission, which is over the state jail. I mean, the state hospital system. Those have been invaluable resources. I mean, you heard we were able to get, because of that, a free evaluation. It costs the state money, but free to, otherwise I would have had to pay that out of my budget, or it wasn't in my court, it's actually another court, to have that young man reevaluated for competency at an expense of $750 to, $1,500, maybe more, to do that exam. We were able to get that because of this jail in-reach opportunity that we had, and because we wouldn't have been invited to participate in that had we not gotten this position. The other thing that many of y'all participated about was the SIM mapping, the sequential intercept model that we did. That report will be coming out. As a result of that, we've had some initiatives that we chose at that time to say these are important things we're going to do. And I'm going to just give you a quick report on one of those, which is a mental health docket for those individuals that have been found to be incompetent. Now, right now, we don't have as many. It's amazing how we were able to get people through to the state hospital, I think, because we've been involved with these programs, and we've gotten folks. So as we go forward, what we found is we can let people sit in jail for a year, 2 years before they go to state jail, before they go to state hospital, or we can figure out ways to help them become competent, restore their competency, so that they're not just sitting there in our jail, taxpayer dollars, taking up room that ought to be for other people. And so with the model we saw in Lubbock and other places, we're going to begin a monthly docket, and it's going to be very kind of similar to what we saw before. It'll and as we work through this, we'll be inviting our partners to be there and to participate. So how's this person doing? Are they taking medication? Or are they not taking medication? Do we need to do something to have court-ordered medication so that they will? Those are the things that we are developing and going through, and we'll start that docket relatively quickly. And the other district judges have agreed to anybody that's found incompetent, they'll be transferred to my court until they're returned to competency. We'll also see them through all the way going to the state hospital, so that we know when they're coming back. If we can't get them competent before they go, when they get there, we'll be ready to get them involved. Because what happens when they get back, if we don't do stuff great, if we don't make sure they have medication, they're continuing, decompensate again, and then we've missed our chance to resolve their cases. So those are some, at the granular level, that's the main thing I was going to talk about, is that we're going to have this competency court, this mental health docket, which is going to planning to review times and time people are sitting in jail before they're restored to competency. Now, all of you guys are involved in different parts of this whole system. Some of you are before it starts, some of it as we go through, some of it it's at the end when they get out of jail or whatever. We have to come together as a community to be successful. And I'm going to just let the sheriff just stand up real quick and say, out of the SIM mapping process that we had, workshop, there was another, besides like what I just talked about, we're going to have a mental health docket. There's another kind of big idea and game changer that the sheriff's agreed to lead. So Sheriff, just real quick, if you want to tell us about, are you ready to do that? Just to say two minutes about what we're doing. Yeah, why don't you come down here? I just think it's important because we as a community need to get behind this, and many of you know about it, but
we'll talk about the heads up later.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Tom Watt, for those of you that don't know me. Out of the SIM workshop, one of the priorities identified was a diversion center. Some of y'all might call it a drop-off center. I think the more appropriate word is diversion center, to help move people out of the criminal justice system or keep them from getting into it, and providing them with mental health resources. We have a robust group of folks that are serving on this work group, if you will. We've had an initial meeting. I will tell you that the help, the assistance we are receiving from JCMH is very robust. It is very strong. Liz, I think I saw you on the call here. We've received many offers of support and actual support from Liz and folks that are connected to Health and Human Services. And so I have a good feeling about the diversion center work that we're doing. It took Bexar County 5 years to get their center open. We ought to be able to do better than Bexar County. So I'm hoping, a couple of years down the road, but we've got many, many obstacles to look at, and resources and funding, and how we're going to pull all the teams together that need to be a part of this. That's going to be the big challenge. And so we have Wilson and Jones, we have TMC, we have Texoma Health Foundation. I think that might have been the smartest move I made, was to bring Michelle Lemming onto our work group. We have a lot of folks involved in this, and I really look forward to some success to report to y'all. Give us a year. We got a lot of work to do, but we have started, and as soon as we have that progress, I'll be ready to report it to you.
thanks, Sheriff.
You bet.
So that's a big idea that came out of the mapping. It's going to be a challenging idea. It's going to take all of us to get involved. And so that's exciting to me. I told you about our mental health docket. That's a small idea, but it's going to be important, especially for those individuals there as we go forward and as our county grows and we have to continue to deal with this population. We'll be working on hopefully the legislature is going to meet, and as a result of this, we're going to be kind of pushing to see if they could, not me individually, but the concept that's come out of this is maybe we have some regional centers to help us do some mental health or some competency restoration, so that it's not just Grayson County having to figure this out, but maybe we got a regional group that'll do North Texas, or Fannin, Grayson, Cook, or through Colin, or however we do that, to get those done. Legally, we have to get psychiatrists to see and medical doctors to see these patients to see these people in jail. Lubbock, they've got people from out of state. They got iPads, they walk in and they evaluate them. And if somebody's very debilitated, and it doesn't take long to figure this out, when they can't communicate, when they're doing things that are bizarre and strange, and you can, so there's ways of doing it. And then they actually say this person needs medication, and the court orders it if they won't take it, and they actually give them that. We're not there yet. So we got a lot of work to do. We're going to continue to do that. In closing, I do again want to just thank everybody that's here. We may have gotten a little bit too detailed for some of you guys what we're doing, but we want to let you know that we're working hard at having success. Judge Henderson has, as you can imagine, he's took a deep dive in this, and it's really important that he did that. And Elizabeth, she's just got such a heart for this population, and so she's been. It's right. It amazes me sometimes the stuff that she'll write and provide us, and you're like, how long did it take you to do that? I mean, she's a prolific writer, providing good, fast information that we need. So we're all in this together. And I want to recognize incoming County Judge Bruce Dawsey and thank him for being here. He went out to Lubbock with us and got to see some of the cool things that they're doing out there. And obviously from his lifetime of work, he's understands this population and is enthusiastically supportive of us all working together to succeed. So I look forward to his leadership on these things as well. With that, Mr. Tim.
He did it. Give him a round of applause. He did it. We cherish your time. So we thank you for being here. We thank our panelists for being here. We are a few minutes ahead of schedule. Is there anybody with a burning question for any of our panelists? Seeing none, we say thank you to you all. We hope to do this on occasion to continue to shine a light on mental health issues in Grayson County and Texoma area. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.